And I believe we are recording. Everybody can see the screen. Fantastic. Hey, welcome everybody to this week's Lone Star Chat. This week we're going to be discussing positioning and process. Both good. A lot of times you see these separated, but I decided to combine them because I think they go. I feel like they go hand in hand, and we'll learn more why here in a minute. So just our quick table of contents. We'll talk about importance of positioning, positioning process, how it goes hand in hand. Um, and then we'll get into what is your process, various positions on the field. And then, as always, if you have any match footage or other questions, happy to answer that at the end. Um, Same intro as usual. Long Star chats are meant to serve as an open forum for referees, providing the best practices and guidance to become a better referee. All referees are welcome to join and ask questions during the presentation. Once again, I want to reiterate that you are more than welcome to raise your hand, pop in, and ask any type of questions during the presentation. Don't feel like I don't want this to be like you're in school and you have to wait till the professor is done speaking to ask a question. Just raise your hand, interrupt me, whatever it may be. And we'll keep it moving. As always, first thing first is thank you all for refereeing games, doing your stuff in the signers, sending us match footage if you have it. I sent out a message to the coaches today to ask for more footage. So I know a lot of these teams will start to invest in like the VAO cameras and stuff like that. So hopefully we have more footage here in the future. Because whenever we get footage from coaches, we definitely look at it. They send us questions through our email and ask things, and we answer that, and it also helps us obviously evaluate where you are and helps me figure out, hey, what do we actually need to be talking about when we go into these meetings, which is why one of the reasons I wanted to talk about positioning and process this week, just based on some feedback and some things that I personally saw in Lone Star and just kind of across rugby. Um, the usual, if you're not SIP, please get SIP. But everybody's SIP from I can tell from this list, so not important. So let's get started. A referee's position matters, right? And it matters because what we're trying to do is ensure fair play and accurate decision making. By being strategically placed on the field, referees can swiftly assess plays, maintain consistency, and create a reliable game narrative is what we call it. And you start to hear this term a lot more the more you get into your refereeing development. What's this game narrative? So and position is not just about where you stand, it's about guaranteeing a level playing field for all the players and enhancing the game integrity and ensuring a smooth flow of the game, right? We've all been in games before where whether you're a spectator or you're a player, or heck, you could be the AR, where the referee's positioning is either in the way, or they're not seeing things consistently, or they're not calling things consistently, right? They're calling a tackle one way here, and then calling a tackle the other way there, and all that leads back to our positioning and also leads back to our process, right? So I'm going to start with this short video because I thought it was a really good video about Craig with and one of the Baton Rugby, the Richard Everett's interviewing him, and he's talking about positioning and kind of the importance of positioning, and we get to watch a little rugby at the same time. So we got.
There's no magic referee position or referee running line that is perfect. They've all got pros and cons, and not all running lines or positions suit all athletes. You know, like we're all different. We've all got different strengths and weaknesses. Big thing with coaching referees is to be aware of the pros and cons of each different position that you take up. And then for each referee to decide for themselves which position are they most comfortable in, and then importantly to know what the downfalls of that position are. And so you're right, like around the time of the 2011 World Cup, I was getting myself probably a little bit wider and a little bit flatter than I did towards the end of my career. I felt after kind of in the last couple of years of my career, I wanted I wanted to have a bit more presence around the breakdown, so I wanted to get a little bit closer. But in order to do that, I needed to be in a position that was going to be closer to the breakdown. I couldn't be as flat because then I would have got turned sideways. So I needed to be a little bit deeper. But also then what I liked about that position is it allowed me to get ball line running earlier. And so I preferred it because I felt I was less reliant on ARs for things like forward passes because I was ball line running.
Right.
And most importantly, what it did, it put me in the same running line into each breakdown. So I approached each breakdown from the same position, and I was able to take up the same position and same running line into every breakdown. So every breakdown looked the same to me. And I thought that was really important for consistency of breakdown decisions, that I was looking at the same picture time after time after time. Now, that doesn't mean that position was perfect. At times, there were dangers of being close, and I had to work out exit strategies for when one-off runners were running in that channel with the 9, picked up the ball and ran sideways with.
Let go 12!
Ball line running demands a bit of extra work. And that's, I guess you could call it one of the inverted commas cons of doing that. But it was one of the things which physically I always worked really hard and I was capable. And so it was a conscious decision. Like I knew from the stats on the GPS device that I wore, I knew that my running distance was going to be more than the average referee because of that running line. But it was something which I trained physically to be able to do that because I believe that made me a better referee. I was never overly graceful when doing a pivot. I'm a big tall man, and when I pivoted, I wasn't comfortable. I didn't look comfortable, and so I worked out for me pivoting wasn't great. Whereas a lot of referees are great pivoters. They do it and they're comfortable, and so then go for it. But allowing the ball to go behind my back, I could work out if it was a deep pass that I could look over my right shoulder and see the ball a split second later. And I also knew if it was a short pass, then it was going to be inside. And then I knew I could look over my left shoulder and see the ball. So, the fundamental reality of refereeing is never lose sight of the ball.
Sure.
And so I always knew which I could look over left shoulder or right shoulder, and at any given time I could see exactly where the ball was.
Some freaking phenomenal running lines in there. He talked about some stuff that we won't really get into today. That's just a little bit more advanced, like your pivoting and some other little things. But some of the stuff that he touched on and the things that are important to us, for most of you at your development level, is us having some fair decision making, right? And that comes in us being in the right position every time. Consistency. You notice he talked about always being ball in line, always coming in at the 45, and seeing the same picture, right? And that's what we talk about when we talk about consistency. In doing that, it allows the game to flow well, right? Because now the game, at a certain point, and a lot of you will get there, and many of you have already there. The game starts to become redundant as we run around the pitch, right? And when the game starts becoming redundant, the game just happens to start flowing. You're blowing the whistle less. You have to talk a little less. You talk when it's important, and it keeps the game going, right? We go from giving out 40 penalties a game to giving out 19 penalties a game, and it could be the exact same. It could be the exact same game and type of game, but we've learned how to move around the field and talk to players and things like that. Consistency, believe it or not, improves our player safety because we're always seeing the same thing. So when we're always getting the same picture, as we start to get that same picture and over, some things become secondary, and it gives us the ability to start picking up on other things because some things are just easy. It's happened so fast. We already know what our picture is. And so it gets out of our mind. Like, for instance, what's a good tackle, right? We all know what a good tackle is when we see it. So when we're going into a breakdown, we don't really have to think about. We don't have to stop and think about, oh man, was that a proper tackle or was that a foul? Was that well? I want some of you still need to work on your foul play, but for the most part, was that a high tackle and whatnot? And so, um, being in the right position and being consistent helps with our player safety. Helps with effective communication because it goes into the same point I just talked about. We keep seeing the same picture, and so the more we see the same picture, the faster we recognize things and the faster we can communicate things, right? And then once again, game integrity, which goes into fair decision making, right? We're giving both teams the same picture. You know, we're not standing behind one scrum half and making one scrum half nervous, and then being in the defensive line on the other team and always giving them offsides, but never giving the other team offside, right? And so that's us having integrity in the game. Oh, I'm not clicked on the right screen. Oh, we're tired of hearing you. Here we go. Bam. Make sure that's the right screen. Yeah, that's the right screen. So but before, and he talked a lot about the running lines, and I wanted to start with that just so we have those running lines, those conversations about running lines in our head as we start talking about process, right? And I think process becomes even bigger than us having the perfect running line, because if we have a process, it allows us to have good running lines and good position on the field. So when we're talking about fast-paced rugby, referees' consistent process is like the backbone of running a fair and smooth match, right? So like picture this: the game kicks off, a referee maintains a consistent routine, ensuring that like every scrum, every line out, and every tackle sequence follows the same procedural steps. Like, what does this do for our players, right? This consistency not only instills confidence in the players, but it also creates a foundation for our decisions, kind of like I mentioned before. It creates a level playing field where everyone knows what to expect. Oh, this referee has been calling this all day. Whether it's right or wrong, we're being consistent in what we're calling, right? So in doing that, it makes the game more manageable, but also makes it more enjoyable for the referee and for the players, right? And so we have a few different type of processes that we want to have in our head. As we go through these are not like absolutes, right? All of these are not absolutes. As you develop, as you do more and more games, our processes change. And so this is just more meant to help you set a foundation. It's some of the things that I do. It's some of the things that I've been taught and whatnot. So I don't want you to think, oh, you have to do it like this. It may be a really good way to do it, but in refereeing, everybody has their own flair and their own style. There are some characteristics that we all need to have, and like we'll talk about that on scrum setup and having a slow scrum setup. No matter what level referee you are, whether a new referee or you're in the World Cup, like we want a slower scrum setup process, right? So anyway, we'll get into that. So these are 4 different processes. Actually, we'll only go through 3 of them today: scrum setup, line out setup, tackle ruck sequence, and foul play is a little bit easier because we have a process for that. But anyway, so boom. We'll start with the scrum. So I want to start with this clip. This is Chris Hansen, and we're not going to today. We're not going to talk about a proper scrum. What we are talking about is our process to set up a scrum and us having a consistent process. I don't know. Let me see if Chris is randomly in here. Sweet, he's not. Well, not sweet. Doesn't really matter. But so I'm going to play these 2 clips first, and then I'll go through the talking points. But what I want you all to notice is, or you don't notice, his process from his first. This may be his 3rd scrum of the day, and I chose the 3rd scrum because the audio is actually good. And like this is like his last scrum of the day, maybe last 1 of 2 scrums of the day, and notice how his voice, his inflection, and maybe his process doesn't really change that much, which is a really good thing. We got sound. It's shit. It's choppy.
Crouch. Bind. Set. Ball's up.
There you go.
Hey, take a little too close. I like it close, but a little too close.
Me in.
Yeah. Just hold your weight. Hold your weight. 8 man, hold him back. Here we go.
Like I said.
2 foot out. 2 foot out. Support weight. 2. There you go, hooker. Thank you. Crouch. Bind. Set. Hold.
And so I want to get some engagement. What are some things y'all to notice? And once again, we're not even talking about necessarily if something went right or wrong in a scrum. What did y'all notice in terms of what he did or didn't do in his first and last scrum of the day?
He was managing the scrum. He was consistent about positioning. He kept that. How do I say? He was very concerned about not letting it get sloppy because it was the end of the day.
Yep. Sal, I saw you had your hand up.
Not so much coaching, I guess, but just making sure like the teams are following safe protocols, hookers having feet out, needing that break foot. I mean, I'm sure you can get tired towards the end of the game, kind of forget that, but just reiterating that to teams is super helpful.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed, his cadence was almost exactly the same from the first scrum to the last scrum, which tells me that probably if I go look at all his scrums in between, it was probably pretty consistent throughout the day. Whether those scrums were going right or wrong, his process was consistent, and so that's the important part. Does anybody have a scrum process that they go through before we get into this scrum process? Rachel, what do you do when you know a scrum is coming? You just called a knock on. What is your thought process? Please walk us through it.
So typically my thought process is after I've called a knock or something like that, get the boys in. If I've seen something from the previous scrum that I didn't like, before they start getting into that scrum formation, I'll let them know, like, hey, I need you two to straighten your hips, or hooker, I need your break foot out first, so farther out, so that I'm not doing it while they're getting into position and all that. They've heard what I've said. Then I get them spacing correct. So, making sure that they're the correct spacing apart right away, so that I don't have to re-blow them up and go, nope, let's do this. Then say my first one, crouch. I look for that stability. I'm looking that the props are holding their own weight. The locks are not pushing them forward. All of that jazz. Then I say bind. And again, I'm looking for that stability. I'm looking for them to not be moving back and forth. I'm looking for a nice long bind, either on like the side or the number. Making sure that there's space in between the shoulders and whatnot, making sure. And then coming together on set, giving them that brief second to settle themselves down before possibly having to blow up if there's too much movement and whatnot.
Yeah, really, really good. Almost textbook, right? And so the scrum can be the most dangerous part of a rugby game, right? What we got 1,000, well, some of these teams maybe 200 pounds, but maybe 1,000 plus pounds coming across each other, fighting for one size 5 ball in the middle. And so when we come into a scrums, our biggest priority is safety first. Like, it's not somebody winning the ball, it's not making sure the 9 put the ball in exactly straight down through the middle. It's to make sure that their scrum is safe and set up correctly every single time. And so when we go through our scrum process, this is one of the only areas where in refereeing, like, hey, everybody kind of needs to be on the same page when we're doing this, right? And so the first thing is crouch. Crouch, We're looking for our front row shoulders to be in line and the loose head not tucked underneath the hooker. And I know everybody may not know what that means, but this is what it means, right? So we that shoulder is literally the loose head shoulder is underneath the hooker shoulder, right? So we're already starting in a bad position. We want to on crouch. We want to make sure everybody's interlocked. Both teams are roughly the same height, so you don't have to be pedantic and be like, "Oh, this team is 3 inches higher and this team is 2 inches lower." But we want to be roughly the same height, and that we have stability. Right. Once we get to that stability, meaning that nobody's moving, everybody's holding their own weight, then we want to call the bind. Bind, we typically like to see nice long binds from our props. One thing Rachel mentioned, and which is spot on, especially for those loose head, is binding on the back or on the side and not underneath. And the reason we don't bind underneath, it's a high probability that we're going to pull the whole scrum down if we're allowing them to bind underneath. Right. And so we want to see a nice long bind. And what I tell teams in the pregame chat, I want to see a long bind onto the jersey, not the shorts, not the wrist, onto the jersey, right? Because sometimes a loose head like to get cheeky and grab onto the other person's wrist as well. We want to see binding onto that jersey. Once again, once we have everything set up, we're looking at all the binds, right, on our front row and on our back row. Not our back row, our second row. And then once again, are those shoulders straight? Great. We have a gap. Great. We have stability. We're not moving around. Great. Cool. Now we can call set. Boom. That set come together. Teams are allowed to hit each other. Like it's a contact sport. And typically what we're going to see, a scrum kind of goes up and then it's going to take a second to come back down and settle. That's completely fine. That's not like an early drop. Even if they come together and one team takes a step backwards, typically, hey, just wait a second, right? We're trying to see if we have that hit, and then and we stop. But if it moves a little, that's fine. Save yourself the whistle and see, and just breathe and see what happens the next second. Typically, that scrum will stop moving, and then we're free to put that ball in. But once again, we're looking on that set. We're staying bound. Our bodies are straight. Our people aren't stepping out. So like this is demonstrating how they step out. Usually when it's too much pressure or that shoulders underneath the hooker. And once that ball goes in, we're just looking for a straight push and people not walking around or the team's not walking around. So any questions, comments here?
I think the only extra thing on my checklist, maybe this is from doing lower level games where I don't have good ARs, is to have a look at the defensive line, back line, just to make sure they start on an onside position before I start working with the scrummers.
Yep. Very, very good point. I'll add to that. Check both sides, right? So you're gonna get me off on a tangent. We won't make it long. A lot of times we love to call in offside on the defense on a scrum, right? Because they're coming up from 5 meters and they've creeped up to 2 or 3 meters. At the same time, the attack must also stay 5 meters back from the scrum. And so if we're ever getting in a situation where, hey, we're about to call offside on the defense, take a look over and see if the attack, which most of the time probably were they creeping up as well, right? We probably watched professional games like, oh man, the defensive line is completely offside from the scrum, but we seldomly check the attack, who also is supposed to be 5 meters away. So if the attack is creeping up, the defense has the right to creep up. Sorry, side tangent. Definitely check offside lines, but don't let the attack get away with it. I'm anti-attack. I'm all defense when I'm refereeing. So yeah, Gary.
Yeah. So I had a game, and I know Doug got this phone call from SHSU. So when the scrum is engaged and the ball's released in the middle and the scrum is pushed, the side that the scrum is being pushed towards, they still have to move back. They still have to maintain that 5 meters, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Because it's been a while since I was asked that question by a team, but yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yep. And until when, Gary? Until there's only 1 point, they don't have to stay 5 meters back. Should be an easy one for you.
When the ball reaches the 8-man's foot in the back of the scrum?
No, even easier. Even easier.
Once it crosses the mark?
Nope. Because they can be getting driven back after it crosses the mark. It's when you get to the goal line, right?
Oh, goal line. Oh, because they don't have to move back. Yeah, well,
right. So we have like a 5-meter scrum, and they're getting driven back. The defense doesn't have to move.
No,
back.
They just have to stay on the
Correct.
goal line. I got you.
So
All right.
I didn't want anybody to think, oh man, the defense is supposed to be 5 meters back from the goal line, because somebody will do it.
Right.
And
I'm pretty sure there's other people on there that probably couldn't answer that question either.
Yeah, no, I'm giving you a hard time.
No, you're good, man.
Sweet. So next we'll move into the to our line out process. Gary, I know you're on. Hey, what's your line out process, Gary? What are you thinking? Somebody just kicked the ball into touch. What is the process that you go through?
Okay, first of all, I got to watch the ball. I got to see what the ball does. The first thing I have to do is see, okay, the ball's kicked out. Now, is the ball being interfered? Is the ball going into a road? 9 times out of 10 with some of these locations, there's no quick throw because a fan touches the ball or the ball is too far deep. So what I do is I make my mark. Then I move up to the 5. I get my meter on each side, and then I just tell the teams talk to each other, let me know. Place my guy the non-throwing side, make sure I got a 2x2. And depending on the location of the pitch, if we're inside the attacking 22 or the defending 22, I'm going to put myself inside that 5-meter tunnel or behind the thrower. So just in case it's a quick throw and I have a good picture on seeing if they're going to do something real quick since they're close to the goal line. If it's in the middle, in between the 22 or both 22s, I usually try to put myself in the back, but kind of on the defensive side, and just look at where the throw is. Make sure that the lifters are lifting on or catching the ball on the outside of their shoulders, not on the inside. So it depends on location of where the ball reaches the touchline.
Gary, textbook answer. Textbook answer. I appreciate it. Yeah, where's Sal?
So, not to get you on too much of a tangent, but I do wonder how you would treat this, because I've seen it happen a couple of times where in play, ball gets kicked out, and a fan who knows the rules will just go like touch a ball to stop that from happening. If you could discern that the fan was for the defense, would you let attack or who in that position ball just play it?
No, I wouldn't. But what I would do, and it depends on the setup of the field. You just never know. If we have fans standing on the team side, right, I'm going to have a conversation with their captain, and either they need to have a conversation with their coach or they can fix it themselves. Hey, these fans are supposed to be here. Next time this happens, it's going to be a penalty against you or whatever it may be. But I'm going to fix that situation like that, right? And usually it doesn't happen twice. If it would happen again, I'll stick to my word and I penalize the whoever it may be. But typically that doesn't happen a lot. If the ball is kicked and it was kicked, so like Texas State Field, the fans sit on the opposite side of the players like they're supposed to. You know, the ball is rolling out of bounds and a fan is standing at the rope and they touch the ball. Hey, good on them for knowing the rules and helping their team or knowing the laws. So
cool. Just making sure, because I've definitely seen that. I probably like more than a handful of times. I can definitely tell some guys are cheeky, especially those in men's clubs games.
Yep. And so that's all a part of our pregame process when we're walking the fields and make sure we have the right ropes and everything up as well, right? So, good question. So, hey, Gary, you hit a spot on, and you actually touched on a point that I didn't even put on here, and I'm not going to talk too much about today, but watching that ball as it goes into touch, right? Because we have different type of lineouts, right? We can have a quick throw, which is considered a lineout. We can have a regular lineout, right? And so very important. So we're going to watch these two clips, and then we'll go through the talking points again.
If I can add one more thing.
Yeah.
My last game, I actually had that happen to where the ball rolled out. I watched it. A fan touched it, and then the throwing player was like, "Hey, we can do it quick." I was like, "No, you cannot." As soon as I told them a human body has touched the ball, they knew exactly what I was talking about. They were trying to see. Sometimes they'll try to see what the ref knows.
Yeah. What can you get away with?
Right. If it touches a body, a human body, dog doesn't count. A human body, that is not a quick throw. That does not allow a quick throw. And as soon as I said that, they knew. So
Yeah.
some of these teams will try to test your knowledge. Just be aware of that, people.
All right, we're gonna watch these two clips and let's see if we see a different process. There's no
You need to
sound
change
on.
that law. Dogs definitely need to count. Come on now. What we doing?
FY, there are no sound. There are no sound on these, so don't be alarmed. And we talked about last week our nonverbals and our body language, right? When we're looking at the referee, do we know what he's trying to tell people? We imagine there's 60,000 people yelling right now, and the players have no clue what you're saying. Our nonverbals communicating the message we want to communicate, right? With no sound is also nice because we can see is the referee doing the same thing every single time, right? And we're getting the same picture every single time. I don't know who got the ball last time. So, what are some things y'all noticed? Anybody?
He was walking through the middle of the line out. He was also giving a hand up signal to the defensive line.
Yeah, he did pretty much every time. He actually walked the same way, probably took the same amount of steps every single time. So that's good, right? We're getting the same picture. These which was interesting. We talk about. Well, I mentioned, hey, it doesn't matter if we're doing something right or wrong if we can start with consistency, right? Because we can fix things that are right or wrong, and we can start to change our picture. There are definitely some things happening wrong in both of these lineouts, right? But the fact, and John and I had some of this conversation, but the fact that he's going through the same process every time lets me know he's at least thinking about what he's doing, and we can start to fix the little things that are happening. Like it's Blues line out, and they only have 5 people, and they have the entire pack plus somebody's mom or something right here, right? And we can start to fix those little things. And so when we're thinking about our line out process, Gary pretty much hit on every point that I had. And I know he wasn't reading the screen because you can hear it in his in inflection and pace that he knows exactly what he's looking for every line out he's going in. And so, and this is kind of my process of what I'm thinking about once I know an actual line out is going to happen, right? And so I get you just a second, Robert. Like the first thing I'm thinking about is once that ball is kicked out, where are we at in the field of play? Because that's going to dictate where I stand, right? Same thing Gary said. If we're close to the 5 meter attacking out, 15 meters attacking out, I probably want to be at the front because we're probably going to have some type of maul. If we're in the middle of the field, then it kind of just depends on where they've been throwing all day. Sometimes in the back, sometimes in the front. Right. So where we out on the field, when I'm going through, I want to make the mark for both teams. I want to make sure we have a 1 meter gap. I want to make sure the defensive hooker, this guy right here, is 2 and 2. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but the high level of games, they like to start scooting back and scooting over because they want to get back into play faster, right, in and around the corner. Are there any receivers? Right. So we have a receiver. If this guy receiver, he should only be 2 meters away. He's hiding between this 5 meter line and the 10 meter line. So are you in the attacking line or are you a receiver? If you're a receiver, you should only be 2 meters away. You see it a lot from the defense too, especially if they've lost a lot of lineouts. They want to stand about 7 meters away so they can hurry up and get into play because they're not going to be considered offsides and whatnot, but you're better off being closer. Anyways, I'm checking how many attacking players they have. Side note, you don't have to tell teams, and neither does the attack. It's more of a gentleman's agreement, but you don't have to tell the teams how many attacking numbers the attack team has, right? But the attacking side can't delay or do anything deceptive so the defense doesn't know how many they have, right? So When if you ever get teams yelling, sir, they're not telling us their numbers, they're not telling us numbers. It is not anybody's job, not the referee or the other team, to tell them how many numbers they have. But it is their job to match, right? And then once the ball is thrown in, I'm looking for, is there a fair contest while the ball is in the air? Is either the jumpers getting pulled down at the arm, or they getting hit? If it's a maul about to be set up, are the lifters getting tackled or whatnot? So, yeah, Robert.
Actually, you took some of my thunder there about where on the field you are. Where are you going to stand in the lineup? Where you are on the field. But one point I was going to bring up is that, especially now, I mean, before we were always really concerned with the, are they in the 22 or they take it back in the 22? And now we got to start worried about, I do that, Gary, when I'm running up the line, where'd they kick it from?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a 50-22? Is that on or not?
Yep.
Did they take it back? So sometimes you got somebody on the side, even if they're not an AR, if there's a touch judge, you go, hey man, where'd he kick it from? Because you might not have seen exactly. So when you're running up there, you can ask. Even a touch judge, you can ask that because they may know that answer.
Yeah, and you actually get into a process that we're not even talking about today, but what's our attacking kick process, right? So when a team kicks it, what's the first thing you think in your head? What's the first thing you're looking for? So like for me, even before a kick, you can pretty much tell when a kick is about to happen when it's a setup kick. I'm checking, hey, are we in front or behind the 22? Did I tell the team they were in front or behind if we're close? Because sometimes you're like right on the line and teams don't know, hey, if I'm on the line, is it in, is it out? So I may say inside or outside. Once they kick it, then I'm looking for where did anybody touch it when it bounced on the ground?
That was my point. Yeah,
yep.
that was what I was saying.
Yeah. Yep, 100%. And so that's a whole nother process that we can get into is your kick process. And your kick chase process is brutal, right? Because then we're looking for offside. Are you the sole referee or do you have ARs, right? So now, how am I looking for offside line? What's my process? Do I look left first? Do I look right first? Like I have literally ways that I'm going about every situation and in process, right? And that's why we're talking about process today. So good stuff, Robert. And I think it's the last process we talk about, but our tackle ruck sequence. Who do I have on here? Robert, you were just talking, so I know you're here. Robert, talk to me about what you're thinking about when you go in when a tackle is happening.
When a tackle's happening,
or even about to happen, wherever you want to start.
Well, first of all, I wish I could run as much as that guy that had that video. I can't keep up that much, so I'm trying to run as little as I can, but I am trying to get there in the same position every time. So you can see whether, the bad part about now is these guys are watching the World Cup and, they see one guy get one hand on the ball and they think, oh, that's a penalty. And I want to let it breathe a little bit. I want to make sure that, first you're not part of the tackle assist. If you were part of tackle assist, you actually let go. And the second one, I want to make sure that the guy that is poaching the ball is that he hasn't gone past it, hands on ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then if he's good, he's hands on. I want to make sure he's at least trying to lift the ball. He's just not falling over and, screaming at me penalty because, I'd rather let it breathe, see if he actually wins the ball. Yep. So many times it's so good to see the guy, you'll hear a guy behind you yelling, penalty, penalty, holding on. I go, bro, he's got the ball. It's in his hands.
That's my favorite.
Right. So I guess there's more to it than that, but that's kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, for sure. And I've tried to kind of simplify it here, right? So for me is tackle role play is what I'm thinking about as a tackle is about to happen, right? And when I said tackle about to happen, even before my first bullet here has tackle been made, I should really put has a legal tackle been made, right? Because if it's an illegal tackle, nothing else really matters. Because we should be going into penalty, but there could be advantage, right? And advantage is a whole nother process, so we won't get into that. But in this case, I'm thinking about this as a legal tackle because I just want us to have the same baseline. So a legal tackle has been made. For me, the first thing I'm looking at is the ball available? meaning it was placed fairly back on the attacking side. There hasn't been a knock or something like that. The very next thing I'm looking for is, has the tackler rolled away in a legal direction? Now, I want to be very specific about a legal direction, right? So the tackler has to roll away from the ball. Sometimes we see, and I can find some clips from Adam to here, but somebody that make a tackle and they're intentionally rolling back into the 9 on the attacking side because they're trying to slow down play, right? We need to roll away legally. That's not impeding the play of the attack. And we're not going to get super in depth on tackle breakdown. Maybe we do that on the next call, because more this is just about our sequence and our process, right? So the tackle's been made. Is the ball available? Is the tackler rolling away? Then I'm thinking about in between there, how close is the attacking team? How close is the defending team? And if there's an assistant tackler holding on to the guy. If there is an assistant tackler and he goes for the poach, did he release the ball carrier? If the attacker, as the attack is coming in to counter-ruck this guy, did they come in and stay on their feet? And so that's some of the things you mentioned as well, Robert. Did they come off their feet? If the poacher gets their hand on the ball, was there a clear lift, right? Because merely getting your hand on the ball isn't a poach. 99% of the time, we won't talk about in 15. We won't get into 7s, which is a slightly different ball game. But and was there a clear lift? And so in these two clips, these are two separate clips. One I want to show a decent breakdown, and attacking. I think this first one's attacking, keeping ball, and then the second one is winning the turnover. A really good turnover win. But I like this one because this is it could have became a high impact play because it's close to the sidelines. I only have touch judges, so I can't trust the ARs. Yeah, fun times. So the first thing we're looking for, if we had a legal tackle is low, he's able where he needs to be. Fantastic. Coming at the 45, that's great. I'm now, for me, I'm looking at this assistant tackler. What is he doing? Because he kind of just dove off his feet. At the same time, I'm like, hey, this guy's coming in legally, and what is this guy doing who's coming in offside, right? So those are the things that are running through my head as this is happening. Once I know that tackle is legal, attack gets over the ball. This guy's kind of just laying on his ground. I'm waiting a second to see, hey, is this ball gonna be available? Right? So now the ball is available. He gets a fair contest clear out. This guy's on his feet. This guy coming back on side. This guy is now I'm thinking about, hey, this guy's kind of in the way to see what he's gonna do. But the 9 is coming in, right? Goes back to onside position. We have an available ball. Let's set everything else back up. Now play it one more time, just regular. Sweet. And then what's funny, so I think this next clip is like the very next breakdown on the other side of the field. And we're gonna backward. So once again, we have a fair tackle. We have a guy on his feet, not touch. I don't think he's touching the guy. I put that bullet point. Where's the attack and where's the defense? Right, the ball is here. The attacker is 2 meters away, meter and a half away. Is the ball available? The ball is 100% available. Though we have a tackler on the ground, he's rolling away legally. He's rolling toward the sideline. They're on the sideline, and the ball is clearly available. Defender gets his hand on the ball legally, lifts up. We waited a second, like Robert said, to see if he actually has the ball.
Coach is good.
He has the ball, and then he gets tackled by the guy on the ground.
Can't play the man on the ground. You can't play the man on the ground.
So I play it one more time, just full speed.
Backward. Coach is good. Can't play the man on the ground.
So as we go into our tackle and our breakdowns, we want to always, because we want to try to, as much as possible, consistently see the same picture every single time to make sure our decisions are always consistent, whether they're right or wrong. I'm not getting to right or wrong. We want to focus on consistency, because even if you're wrong, teams get used to you being wrong. They're like, hey, he's wrong every time he's done this, but at least he's wrong for both teams, and so we still get to play rugby. Before we move on from tackle ruck sequence, we got any questions, comments? Sweet. And then our last slide here. I just want to talk about various running lines, and then we'll watch that beginning clip again to bring it all back together. And I want you to take some note on some of this stuff that's happening, right? So the very first thing when we talk about running lines and positioning is always coming in at the 45. Coming in at the 45, it just gives us the best view of everything, right? It gives us the best view of the breakdown. It gives us the best view of the attacking side. It gives us a great view of the defensive line. So coming in at the 45 degree helps us see everything. And so as much as possible, when you're refereeing, we want to come into that 45, come into that 45, come into that 45 over and over and over. So we're always getting the same picture and we're always having consistency. Other position, and I made up this term, but it's called front line to defense. So it's that position we've come in at the 45. And I'll show you what I mean here.
Backward.
Oops. Spacebar does not work.
You still in?
So we come in at that 45. I'm probably aligned with roughly where the 9 should be at. I could probably be a step or two back, but when I call them front line to defense, I'm in front of the defense. I can see where they're at. I see my line. I've already done the scan, and I'm standing in front of defense, so they know exactly where we're at. I should probably squeeze closer right here just because of what's happening here, but that's why it's nice to have ARs, except for this guy's way back here. But anyway. So the defense knows what I'm looking for. I'm pointing what I'm looking for. We know where the line is. I'm front line of the defense. And then lastly, the jockey position. This should be used more of as a transitional movement. But we find a lot of our referees getting stuck in the jockey position and stand behind the breakdown. Probably a little bit too much. I don't know if John was on here, and don't feel bad, John, when I show this. Let's see if they let me get a clip in here.
My only thing with the jockey position when you don't have real ARs is it's a better position, it feels like, to see the defense, the whole defensive line. And when you're in that, what you call front line defense, you really have to rely on your ARs to see behind your back, it feels like a little bit.
Yeah, and so that's a very good point. So, and once again, like I said, we'll go back to that first video. There's no perfect position. The biggest problem with the jockey position is it takes us out of a credible position, which is why we want to use it as a transition position. A lot of times our referees are trying to manage everything versus trying to manage what's important, right? If we know which direction play is going, so like in this case, the 9 has opened up. Well, we have the entire back line here to our left, and okay, so means he's probably going left, which means this stuff on the right doesn't become important, right? And so we want to manage what's most important. Yeah, if they're offside, if this wing comes offside and he runs up here, is he offside? Yeah. Does it matter? Not really, right? And so being in this position can help us best manage that offside line. Back here, nobody's listening to you back here. Like on the level of games that most of us are doing, nobody's listening to us back there. And so we don't want to sit in that jockey position. What we do want to do, we want to anticipate play and try to be in the best position to best to best manage the game. And it's just unfortunately it isn't always the jockey position. But you are right that you can tend to see more depending on how tall you are, depending on how tall the other team is. Because when I'm in a jockey position, standing at 5'6", there's not a lot of stuff you can see depending on where things are happening. And then the other bad part is you can't see. The important part is what's happening at this breakdown. When we're behind here, we're behind the 9, we're behind 2 or 3 ruckers, and we can't see what the defense is doing in the breakdown where most infringements happen. Here, he's in a great position right now, right? He's in there, what I'm calling front lining, and there's probably a term for it, but he can see exactly what the defense is doing. We can see where the ball is. We can manage this offside line. If we're going to go weak, we have to anticipate it. But he's in a really good position. There's actually a really good movement there. That was a good example of what to do. The only thing we missed there is maybe having been a little bit closer to breakdown and anticipating what they're doing 5 meters out. But this is not a coaching session. Anyway, yeah.
Definitely agree. I think the biggest thing is sometimes that jockey position, as you say, kind of pulls you out of the game almost.
Mm-hmm.
And what, Justin and Gary and I kind of hear a lot is we want to stay connected to the game. And that means players responding to us, we're getting what we need from the players in order to, have a good game of rugby. And when you're in that jockey position, that is sometimes hard to do because, as Justin said, players don't listen to you. They're so concerned on the ruck that if you're not there, your presence is not there, then your words are kind of sometimes meaningless. So the biggest thing is staying connected. Now, that doesn't mean that the jockey position isn't good, because I use the jockey position a lot of the times, as Justin said, as transition. As I'm transitioning from break-on to breakdown, I sit there, I wait, I see, okay, great, everything's going the way that it do. Ball's about to come out. I'm going to get into that jockey position as I'm moving, and then I can move into that next breakdown and then still be continued being with play and being connected. So that's a great way I think about looking at all of it, is staying connected.
Yeah, very good point. And don't get me wrong, the jockey position isn't a terrible position. It's just not a position we want to physically stand in. I was actually working on this jockey position and some new transitions actually for this game. And so if anybody would go to watch this game on YouTube, you're seeing me here a lot. But these two teams were also way more disciplined. And so there's some different things you can do when going around the field, which is something I wanted to practice. I've been working with Scott Green and some of the different stuff that he does. Scott loves the jockey. He loves the jockey position, right? Because his goal is, he's like, hey, I'm not as fit, I'm not as fast as these guys. And so I use the jockey position. I'm always trying to be in transition, meaning he's always trying to be moving, and he feels like he keeps a better flow of his game. And so like here, I'm gonna use a couple of different ones, right? Like I'm gonna come in at the 45, find my defensive line, and then I'm actually stepping to the defensive line and let them come around. Here, like I'm on this side of the 15, and it can cause a lot of traffic to try to get around the 15 and get into this new 45. So if I can, I'm gonna guess what I'm gonna do here. I think I'm gonna try to go into the jockey. I think maybe just work my way around, see where they're going. Yep. So yeah, anywho, we won't get into film review. But those are a few of the different positions. What I want to recommend to our referees is work on coming in at that 45 every single time right now. Like, don't worry about trying to exactly being a defensive line, or I want to work on transitioning from jockey into the line. Your goal right now should be every time getting to the 45. This is, and if you need an example, don't go watch this footage, because I don't do it every time. Because once again, I'm working on other things and other positioning things. But I am in the 45 here, and this is a pivot I'm working on going into the defensive line. running, getting ball in line. So with all that being said, I wanna go back for the end of the meeting and watch this first video, and hopefully this puts a lot of this into context.
There's no magic referee positional referee
and
running
what they're
line
doing
that
with
is
their
perfect.
positioning,
They've all got pros and
they're
cons, and not all running lines or positions suit all athletes. You know, like we're all different. We've all got different strengths and weaknesses. Big thing with coaching referees is
Right.
to be
So he's
aware
working
of the
45.
pros and cons of each different position that you take up. And then for each referee to decide for themselves which position are they most comfortable in, and then importantly to know what the downfalls of that
45.
position are. And so you're right. Like around the time of the 211 World Cup, I was getting myself probably a little bit wider and a little bit flatter
Coming in at the 45
than I
again.
did towards the end of my career. I felt after kind of in the last couple of
Transition
years
to
of my
jockey,
career, I
he sees
wanted
where the ball is going
to have a bit more presence around the breakdown. So I wanted to get a little bit closer. But in order to do that, I needed to be in a position
45
that was going to be closer to the
Right,
breakdown. I
every
couldn't
single
be
time.
as flat because then I would have got turned sideways. So I
45.
needed to be a little bit deeper. But also then what I
Transition to
found,
the
what I
jockey.
liked about that position
So he can work
is
the ball in
it
line.
allowed me to get ball line running
Once again,
earlier. And
like
so
clockwork,
I preferred
coming
it
into
because
the
I felt I was
45
less
in the
reliant
same
on
exact
ARs
picture
for
every
things
time.
like forward passes because I was ball line running.
Right.
And most importantly, what it did, it put me in the same running line into each breakdown. So I approached each breakdown from the same position, and I was able to take up the same position and same running line into every breakdown. So every breakdown looked the same to me. And I thought that was really important for consistency of breakdown decisions, that I was looking at the same picture time after time after time. Now, that doesn't mean that position was perfect. At times, there were dangers of being close, and I had to work out exit strategies for when one-off runners were running in that channel with the 9, picked up the ball and ran sideways with.
So we won't keep watching the same thing, but I just wanted y'all to, like, now when you go and watch watching games and you're watching games to learn, like pick an aspect that you're trying to learn or that you're trying to improve, and look at that aspect and see what the referee, whether on an international level or a club level or collegiate level, like what they're doing. Like for me, watching this clip, I don't even care about what he was talking about because that's just basic. It's basic knowledge. I won't say it is basic knowledge, but now it's a basic thing. But now I'm looking at like where he's putting his position on the field, like how he's coming in at 45 and having that consistent picture. Like that was like 10 rucks back to back, and he's coming in the same way every single time, right? And that's one of the things that take us from being an amateur referee to an even better amateur referee and a really good referee, right? Is having that consistency. So anyway,
Hey, look how
said,
look how young Vanderklark is in that.
Say that again.
Look how young Vanderklark is in that. The number 9.
Oh, right.
Man, he looks like a little puppy there.
Well, he still looks like a dang little puppy, but hopefully he doesn't see this recording. I don't want to get beat up. So with that saying, that's the end of the presentation. But before I stop this recording, specifically about our positioning and process, are there any questions on positioning and process?
I don't have a question, but I got a comment.
Go ahead.
One thing I've learned, and what Justin and what we're learning is correct. We should be at 45s in the in jockey position, but sometimes don't overthink it. The game will drive you to where you need to be, and just watch. Just go with the flow of the game, and you'll find yourself in the chariot position and in the 45.
100%.
But don't overthink it. Just let the game drive you. Don't drive the game. Let the game drive you. As long as you stay ball in line and you keep moving, you'll be absolutely fine. Because sometimes the ball is moved out so fast that you won't have time to get in that 45.
Yeah.
Your best position, especially if it's going to the backs, it's going to be quick balls. Your best position is being in that chariot, especially if it's a crash ball. The last thing you want to do is be in the way of some big dude and some lady going to crush you, because they will not matter if you're right there. You're just going to get in the way.
100%. And like we started with and like we ended with, there's no perfect positioning, right? in a game, you should be going through 3, 4, 5 different positions throughout the entire game, because it's, hey, where can you best manage the game? And so just think about that when you're prepping for your games, and things like that. I have to finish editing it. For anybody training that needs some training things to do at home, because we don't always have games. I've created another sin bin video where you can kind of train this at home using a few cones or whatever you want to put in place of cones, and how we can practice running through some of those lines and moving through those lines. So I'll try to get that posted hopefully tomorrow, maybe this weekend. So with that, I'm gonna stop the recording. Can I stop the recording? Yeah.